Afrobarometer says that senior members are developing questionnaires to be used in its Round 10 survey, which will commence between June and July this year. Chief Executive Officer for Afrobarometer, Joe Asunka, disclosed this on Tuesday in Lilongwe during a meeting which was hosted by Institute of Public Opinion and Research. Asunka goes on to say that people should anticipate a diverse of issues ranging from politics, from countries that are having elections this year, to climate change, governance, and corruption. Franklin Baliga has filed this report.
To follow Afrobarometer surveys, we do it by rounds. So we started in 1999 with round 1. We've done round 2. We are now into round 9. And we are going into round 10, which will start sometime later this year. We expect that it will start sometime in June or July this year. And so the meeting here is to bring the leadership together to talk about what are the issues that we should be focusing on if we're going to ask ordinary citizens in terms of what they think of their governments and their experiences in their daily lives. So in terms of quality data, I mean, this process is very critical in the sense that it allows us to, first of all, pin down the topical issues that we think people would care about. So globally, what are the issues that are of concern to people? And then on the continent, what are the issues that are of concern to people? And as you know, there are going to be lots of elections on the continent this year. Zimbabwe is coming up, Nigeria is coming up, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and several other countries. And so what we normally want to do is to bring the people's agenda to the development discourse and political debates. So what are candidates debating? What are the topics they're debating? And how can we make sure that we bring what people want? What is the people's agenda? What are their policy priorities? And how can we bring those policy priorities to the debates that will occur even before the elections? And so the meeting here is critically important because then it allows us to come up with those key issues that will go into the instrument that we can then use to ask respondents, our ordinary citizens in Africa, to bring them up to the table for discussion. Right, so in terms of over time, the impact, our data are used across the continent by governments, by policymakers, by researchers, and even by students in their studies. So some of the impacts that we've had is using the Afrobarometer data as a basis for asking for improvements in government. So I'll give you an example. Across the continent, Africans say they want term limits. They want their presidents to be bound by term limits, that you shouldn't serve more than 2 terms, whether that term is 6 years or 7 years or 5 years or 4 years. And this, across the board, majority of Africans want their governments or their presidents to abide by term limits. And so we bring this data point to government or presidents who want to claim that their people like them and they want to stay in power more. And so the data becomes very valuable for arguing that this is not what the people want. The people want term limits. The same way when it comes to issues of corruption. We have had data in different countries in terms of perceptions of corruption. And this data has been used widely to influence corruption policies in several countries. It happened in Sierra Leone, it had happened in Ghana, where governments, based on the data that showed that there's high levels of corruption, came up with programs and policies to address corruption, largely because of what the Afrobarometer data shows. In some countries, we've had cases where our data show, for example, the take of Botswana, our data showed that there is some level of tolerance for same-sex relationships, so LGBTQ rights. And because there was a sense that the general population is more acceptable to the issues of same-sex relationships, the country actually legalized same-sex relationships. And so what we do is to bring the data into the public debate so that it influences policy, but it also gives policymakers and governments the anchor to hold on when they are making difficult decisions. At the moment, we have a data point that shows that most Africans really want their governments to take action on climate change. And they would rather want the government to take action on climate change, even if that means it will hurt their economies somewhat. And so because they are prepared to sacrifice their own livelihood to protect the climate. And so when governments are coming to make decisions about how do we handle climate change, they know that their citizens have their backs. And so they can go on to take difficult decisions, implement difficult policies that will address climate change, but it will also be consistent with what their citizens actually need.